Is it madness? Or a monster? Mike and Tom discuss The Babadook, 2014, on this week's main show.
All right, Tom, how are you?
I'm good. We got a little Australian flair today.
We do. We certainly do here. And as we get ready to roll into this week's catch, we are going to do a little bit of plugging. We
Mhm.
are forever getting better. We just had a little snafu as I try to screw around with another video thing, but what we got working,
Mhm.
so don't reinvent the wheel too much. And as you can see from our banner, this is our show, the first, the last, the Nerdom. I'm Mike, and joining me is my host, Tom.
Mhm.
And we cover all things sci-fi, nerd, comic books, horror, cult classics, that sort of thing. Anything
Mhm.
that's more obscure that has a nerd following counts. So here we are again this week. We actually have been pumping out quite a bit of content of late.
Mhm.
Um, and I wanted to call out that we have 57 subscribers, so thank you. If
Mhm.
you are out there and you subscribe to our channel, thank you very much. Uh,
Yep.
we do very much greatly appreciate it. And as always, we have an ever-growing back catalog. Some of the most recent ones that we did our live show of our nerding out, which we hope to do more
Mhm.
of in the future. And we covered what did we cover? We covered good grief. We just did it. Oh, Final Fantasy. Yeah, we did Final Fantasy, and then we did a
Mhm.
bunch of listicles. So to help the
Mhm.
folks out there if they are looking for other content while the strike is on. And in that vein, I'm also very proud of our last few episodes as well, where we covered our second to last nerding out was covered the Barbie, and of course Back to the Future, Fire and Ice, and whatnot. But in any case, I think that's enough plugging. Did you want to say anything about our channel and our efforts thus far,
Yeah.
Mr. Tom?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I know I'm usually kind of huddled away in my cave here, but I did actually venture out on Friday because I found a local comic book shop called Comic Book Survivors that came out or that just opened last month and in July, and yeah, that they're a comic book shop. They sell. They kind of took me a little tour through their little facility there. It's kind of neat how it's broken up. They've got
All
little
right.
sections, little rooms for each things. They have a Marvel room, they have a DC room. Their
Really?
main room has they have almost complete runs of X-Men and Avengers, and yeah, he says that it looks like there's two owners, and the main guy that was kind of gave me the tour, Zachary. He said a lot of it's his personal collection.
Really?
So yeah, and obviously, he said the stuff that he's not willing to part with is maybe a little pricey, but everything else is priced to sell. So and reasonably priced. And he has a little collectibles section. But again, they're just starting, so they're um, obviously there's definitely room to grow, but they're really nice guys there. I enjoyed talking to them for a little while there, and yeah, they seem like great people. So if you're in the area and want to just check things out, definitely is be a good place to stop.
Absolutely. And what was the name of their comic book shop?
Comic Book Survivors. They have a
Oh, okay.
website too.
Awesome.
So yeah, you can check them out on the web as well.
Yep.
They have a little bit of a store there. I don't know. I didn't ask them if they were going to expand their store online or not, but yeah, they have that
Okay.
there as well.
Very cool. Yeah, note on that. We will have that in the show notes and the description down below.
Hmm.
If you're in the area and you are in search of that's always good. That's always good. Boy, that's sure the opposite of what we're used to nowadays, which is like
Yep.
so comic book clothes, especially with the pandemic, we're not knocked out a lot.
Hmm.
Um, but hopefully they are always ever forever eternally open, and there's fans out there that put their money where their mouth is. That's why it's very important as a fan to support them.
Yep.
Oh, there's your video. Hopefully your video catches up here.
Yeah.
Uh, But we're learning all the time with this streaming recording thing. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
let me my
yeah, your
oh
sounds
no,
good.
yeah. Okay, okay. And maybe I have a few different
It'll
windows
well,
open. I'll go ahead and close most of them,
yeah,
so
we'll
see if
let it go
that'll.
as we continue on. As long as you can see, hear me, and I can hear you and see. Yeah, see, they're just caught up. No, no big deal.
Okay,
All right.
cool,
Yes.
cool.
What would life be without a little bit of fun happening? And
Hmm.
before we jump in, as you can see, we're about ready to launch into one that was very interesting. Definitely provoked some very strong emotions for me.
Oh yeah.
Um, and before we do that here, I was gonna shift us over to our main screen here and kind of cover our thing as we go forward. Again, this is our main channel. You can catch us on YouTube. We are always open for business there. And I was going to say, I guess I didn't do this. Oh, that's fine. Nothing's perfect. Oh yeah, that's right. I did it. I did it like this so we could have a little bit more fun, as it were. But in any case, while I screw around with this thing, so to set us up, Tom,
Hmm.
what's this movie about? Well, first off, where'd you hear this one? Because I know before we talked offline, you were saying that you had kind of sort of ran into it here and there, but you just never got around to watching it. Um, where did you first hear about it, and what intrigued you about it enough to uh, for us to cover it?
Oh, actually, I think we've got a couple of them kind of switched around as far
Oh,
as the
oh,
ones we
that's right.
discussed. This one,
That's right. You're right.
this
You're
one's
right.
I've been a fan of for a while now. It came out in 2014. I I'd heard about it through the grapevine, through various horror people. Stephen King was a big advocate of the movie, and so when it I didn't see it in the theaters, but when the Blu-ray came out, I uh, I got that. It's the special edition, and it's got a little
Oh.
foldout with the
Oh
Babadook in
man. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah,
it.
actually go ahead and show that up to the screen here and I'll
Sure.
switch the view here.
Yeah. Yeah. The Babadook, and it's very reminiscent of the book.
Yeah,
And
the book
there's
is
books.
red.
Yeah. 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 And it says Mr. Babadook, but the obviously the Blu-ray says the Babadook, and then you pop it open, and you get the guy in there.
That is the Babadook for sure. Awesome.
Yeah.
And you can't get rid of the you can't get rid of the Babadook. No, you can't.
No, yeah. So yeah, it came out on Blu-ray, and um, it does have a quote from Stephen King that says, "Deeply disturbing and highly recommended." And then William Friedkin, who unfortunately passed away a few weeks ago, wrote, "I've never seen a more terrifying film than The Babadook. It will scare the hell out of you as it did me." So pretty high praise for both Stephen King and William Friedkin. But yeah, so I really wanted to see it. I bought the Blu-ray sight unseen because I'd heard so many good things about it, and I have to say I wasn't disappointed. It's one of those movies that once you see it, it sticks with you. It's very emotion filled, action packed. It's The Babadook is a little misleading just from the name of it. It sounds like it's going to be a creature feature, and it does have a creature in it, kind of a monster in it, but there's a lot uh, under the surface of this
There
movie
there is.
that that and we'll try to dig into it without too many spoilers. But the fun of this movie is kind of digging into it and pulling out a lot of the emotional baggage and kind of examining it, because it's one of those movies that you could really discuss and kind of throw back and forth. And yeah, so a lot of these movies I don't give you any warning about. I just say, hey,
Mm-mm.
let's watch this. So I know I've thrown some pretty pretty big doozies at you. Would you? How is this level with the
Yeah,
with the rest of them?
yeah,
Hmm.
I did I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it. It was very visceral. And it doesn't take long before you can feel every friggin' emotion between the mother and the son. That's not a spoiler. Those are the two. The main protagonist is Amelia. and you kind of start in, and it's a mom and a son. Then you learn that the dad died. That's not a spoiler either.
Hmm.
These are just basic components that kind of set up the story. Yeah, I have a lot to say about it. It is just like many times whenever we enter the intersection of horror and psychological thriller, whatever you want to call that,
Hmm.
in the psyche sphere, so to speak. I know that it's a good something. Where when you get done watching it, you don't quite know how you feel, or there's
Hmm.
this residue.
Right.
Now, the difference between this one and a typical horror movie that I thought was interesting, and again, I'm not going to spoil it, but there is somewhat kind of an interesting. I don't know if you could call it closure, but there is a significant resolution, so to speak. Not quite
Hmm.
how you would think between the horror setup, but it nonetheless.
Hmm.
And this isn't going to spoil anything, but Babadook doesn't go away.
Yeah, yeah. So
So,
the so the basic story is, yeah, the it's a mother and son. Like Mike said, the father is died. He actually died on taking the mother to the emergency room to have the son, and he dies on the way there in an accident. And so there's a lot of grief and a lot of emotion that's kind of boiling under the surface for the mother, and obviously that's going to affect the child in
mm,
ways as well. And it all kind of comes to a head as the child approaches his seventh birthday. Samuel approaches his seventh birthday,
yep.
and they innocently enough get a book out to read. His mother reads him a book every night, and he pulls up this almost homemade picture book that neither one of them knows where it came from.
Mm,
And
I was wondering about that. I didn't quite
yeah,
catch
well,
that when the movie was
there's
playing.
there's a lot of things that are left unsaid in this movie, and it's very interesting because you know the way that we communicate with each other, um we don't always come out and say how we feel, and a lot of things kind of boil under the surface or never voiced out,
True.
and there's a lot of to this movie in that sense, but also there's this heightened kind of it's not reality in this movie. There's a lot of stuff that's kind of takes place in people's heads that
Hmm.
aren't really happening. In For you to possibly believe there's this monster, the Babadook, you kind of have to heighten the reality of things a little bit, so that it he doesn't look ridiculous. And they do that in making the house its own character as well. That house is very oppressive and has a um, has a mood to it that kind of bears down on both the mother and the child. And they do get out a bit, but I was kept being reminded of this movie of The Shining. The Shining kept kind of coming back to me
Okay.
because this movie. Um, it doesn't take a huge snowstorm in the middle of nowhere for you to feel trapped. And this mother and son in this house in Australia in a small community,
Right.
they're trapped there. They're in a sense trapped emotionally in that house, and the things that go on in that house no one else knows about. And they may have little windows into it, but yeah, it's them.
That's
And
true.
yeah.
Yeah, I will say right off the bat, there is no fault in the acting in any of this, and I
Mm-mm.
believe the main actress, Essie Davis, I believe, probably butchered her name. My apologies. I believe this is her first.
No, no,
No, no, no. Okay, no, no.
no.
It's the director was their first debut or no?
Yeah, it's her first directed feature length
There we
movie,
go. Yep, Jennifer
writing and
Kent.
directing. Yeah, Jennifer Kent. Yeah, we'll talk about her a
That's
little
right.
bit later. But yeah, Essie
Absolutely.
Davis is phenomenal, and
Absolutely.
the child in it, Noah Wiseman. It's you know. I'm I'm never going to be super critical of a child actor, but he does a really decent job.
He does.
There's occasional things where it may be a little overacted or whatnot, but again, you can look over that
Yeah, I will say this. I
because
had
he
a
does a
very
phenomenal job for a
oh
6-year-old child.
he is a great job. He to the point to like where
Mm,
you almost feel bad because at
mhm,
one point in one at one side of the film you want to slap him because he does
mhm,
such a good job, and then the other side, you're just kind of like whipsawed between wanting to, shut up, kid, all the way over
mhm,
to like, come here, just feel so sorry for him. And boy, they pile on that
mhm,
child character. They don't wait at all, and then you kind of
mhm,
you are just dropped the story making the plot it's very interwoven very quickly to where you are in their life. You are in
mhm,
their slice of life, and you see how miserable it is. And the kind of the kickoff to kind of set the tone. What you learn is that this child, Sam, he is essentially he never got to see his dad. And this is a little bit of a spoiler, but not really. I mean, they say it really early on, but you find out that his dad dies, and it's
mhm.
the day that he's born.
Yep.
And it's just like from that point, they just the negative emotions just keep piling up and piling up and piling up until it is palatable. All
Mhm,
throughout this film, like you just like it just seems like it's constantly raining outside from the time that they're in their house to
mhm,
the time that they get to to different important points through the film. There were a couple parts that I did not care for, and I think that it didn't need. That these are minor kind of things. Ones that kind of just bit me a little bit wrong and left me kind of twisted a little bit too much for this kind of film. And of course, I'm speaking with the family pet. Of course, we won't get into that too much, but aside from that side of the house, but it still goes to the thing. It's kind of like it kind of just leaves a question mark of like, but what about that? Like as and then but it's quickly dropped and it just kind of moves on to a more somewhat satisfying. I wouldn't even say satisfying. Somewhat satisfying. I don't know. It's kind of like the thing. But as our intro said, this is very thematic with the different layers and whatnot. But I was gonna say, kind of diving into the child actor. Some of the notes that I had this week were basically some of the things that we well, let me cover this real quick. The special effects are very good, and they were done with stop motion animation and practical
mhm,
effects, and that whenever that can be done to a good to great quality, a movie never suffers from that at all. And this is you don't see too many of these things, but
mhm,
man, that it just goes to play when you do see this creature. It kind of it just it kind of it gets to you a little bit.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, you don't see the creature a whole lot, and that's to the benefit of the movie. A lot of times, the less you see of a creature, the more frightening it is.
Right.
And the movies, uh, the director, she wanted to originally do it in black and white, and wanted to do kind of
Heard that.
almost a German expressionistic sort of movie, like the um, like the cabinet of Dr. Caligari, sort of, and also the Babadook's somewhat based on the creature from the Lost movie, London After Midnight. Lon Chaney. There's famous pictures of him, kind of uh, giving this kind of this kind of creepy picture, and but all of footage of that movie's gone. It's disappeared. But yeah, the Babadook's kind of based off of him, the how he looked in that movie from the stills. But yeah, she wanted it black and white, but she decided to go ahead and do it in color. But then the color palette of the movie is very muted,
Mm.
and in the house you have the walls that are painted kind of a dark blue, in shades of blue, and the paneling, a lot of the paneling's black. The wood floors are kind of aged to almost black, and it's all scarred up. And
Hmm.
the cool thing about the set is that's actually a set. They wanted it in a kind of Victorian house, but they from the funding that they got, they had to film it in South Australia, and there's not very many Victorian houses in southern Australia, so they actually built a set of it, and um, and on the Blu-ray they kind of do a little set visit. And you they couldn't show the outside the windows, so there's a lot of creative filming in it. They had to do certain angles. Also, when you first see it, you're really dug into the movie and are really taken with it. And there's scenes where the mother gets very abusive to the verbally abusive to the
Hmm.
child, and that you're getting bombarded with that. Now, when I did watch it I'd seen it before, so seeing it again, I could see where they cut it to where the child wasn't present when she said the more
That
nastier things,
that's
and
what I yeah, that's what
mhm,
I read, that they basically they really went the extra mile to shield the child actor
mhm,
from anything that could have possibly been, even down to Kent basically gave an alternative narrative in which his character was the hero. Even
mhm,
even down to that in that research that I
mhm.
saw. But
Well,
yeah,
you could look at the movie that he is actually the
yeah,
hero in the
she no,
movie.
she wasn't fibbing. I mean, she wasn't lying. She wasn't lying
Yeah,
because really, in a way, he is. In a way,
yeah,
without getting into spoilers, but
mhm,
this one has where there's this very strong sense of the mother and the child, and
mhm.
they're in this strange place in life.
Mentally,
And
yeah,
yeah,
mentally kind of
it's just
strained.
yeah, strained is the very
Strained to the
beginning.
point of breaking, and it does break at one point. And there's okay, a lot of people, if you haven't seen this yet, you're thinking, well, you got the Babadook, some monster, but then you have the mother and son. How does that all congeal together? But there's an argument that can be said: is the Babadook even real? How much of the Babadook is actually real, and how much is it not? And how much does it
What?
even really matter? Because a lot of it, um, you can. Um, One of the cool things about horror movies is that they can express raw emotions and explore emotionally charged themes without getting too real. You kind of almost set it aside a little bit to examine it a little bit more deeply. But yeah, there's that sense of, how much is the Babadook just a part of their psyche at that moment in
Yes,
time, and is he even real?
right.
Because there's scenes that you see that she is definitely hallucinating at certain points, which is proven in the movie, because there's a couple of outsiders that come in to check on the child, and she is obsessed with this hole in the wall, and the observers come in and see that there's no hole in the wall. So there is definitely some hallucination involved, and yeah, so it plays it in a I won't say a fun way, because this movie's pretty heavy. There is some humorous moments in it, But yeah, it's pretty heavy handed as far as the emotions. But there is that kind of teasing of the audience of, is it real or isn't it real? And the audience gets to play along and decide how much they believe it's real and how much it's not. And I know that that could be frustrating for some audiences. Some people just want to know, is it real or not? And I think the fun of this movie is that you really don't know how much of it is real.
Exactly, yeah, that's where, and they don't take any time to get to that point either. You
Mm-mm.
you you kind of get a sense that there's an imbalance there with the
Mm-hmm.
perception is reality, that kind of thing. First, it's kind of like you see it from the perspective of the child when you're introduced to this kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then you kind of see the kid act out in certain kind of ways. And he's got a cousin, and and his mom's sister. Like,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much everything is strained in this movie with these two
Yeah.
characters, with the
Yeah.
mom and the son. And
Yeah,
you, and
there's
you
no close
yeah.
relationship, and the closest that they have is the next door neighbor who has Parkinson's.
Mm,
And I think they're kind of the mother kind of keeps her at a distance as being protective of her, whereas a lot of times the people that you probably should reach out to is your next door neighbor, but and they seem readily accessible, but sometimes there's that wall there that they can't breach.
No, there is a there it- they hit that wall quite a bit, every step of
Hmm.
the way, from work to anything. And the funny thing is that when and then this isn't gonna, I mean, there's no other way to get around it, but you're kind of you're struck with this massive hole that this family was left with when the dad died in very
Hmm.
tragic circumstances.
Yeah.
And that keeps coming up over and over and over again, and it keeps building and building, to where it is the wall, essentially.
Yeah.
Um, Even to the detriment of the mom. There was a slight scene in there where the mom is just trying to relax and go to sleep. I won't get into too gritty detail, but I think you know what I'm talking about. It's at the very first half of the movie, and she
Hmm.
just can't. And then a little bit later on, when she caught the eye of a coworker, who at first you kind of don't seem like there's like a romantic kind of thing there,
Hmm.
but there is. Or you
Hmm.
find out there is there's some in intentions anyway.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a lot of stuff under the surface, just barely
right,
under the surface, that's
right,
never explicit. And that's what I
right.
love about this movie, is that it's never explicit. There's a moment, there's several moments where the mother rubs her jaw, and that her teeth's bothering her, but
Oh, that's right.
she never mentions it, doesn't ever verbalizes it. But that's another thing that's under the surface. She's so intent on trying to bury and and say that everything's normal, or she's trying to get back to normal by
Right,
burying everything, by not acknowledging the uncomfortable things, by pushing them under.
right,
And a lot of times you just can't do that. They explode in various ways. The son's acting out because he doesn't know how to relate to what he's feeling as well. He's just exploding. There's that sense, there's it it hits upon a lot of uncomfortable things that we just kind of overlook in society, like when you're out and about and you see that unruly child, and you go, oh geez, and you just kind of look the other way. Or
right.
you're you have kids, so, I don't, so I don't, I'm maybe not exposed to certain things, but there's probably like groupings of kids, and there's that one kid that kind of stands out, or that one kid you go, oh geez, I'm glad that kid's not my kid. And this is that kid. Uh, Look, and they really play it up at the beginning, because you you start there's a sense of sympathy for the mother, for her having to go through all of this. Now she's not obviously not not innocent at all. She has a lot of things that she does to cause issues, and that's another thing about the movie is they don't place blame. Everybody has
No, they don't.
reasons for what they do, and the mother, at least in the beginning, is never acting malicious, or she's a good mom, or she's trying to be a good mom.
Or
Now what?
repeatedly,
Yeah,
repeatedly. Yeah.
repeatedly, and she's kind of doing the self-sacrifice thing, like
Right.
not acknowledging she has a maybe really bad toothache that's maybe obsessed, that's leading to her having lack of sleep as well, that's pushing
Mm.
her towards the edge. Because I know, if you have a really bad tooth thing, it can mess with your equilibrium and your mind and everything as well. And so there's that her trying to combat all of the, the bad things that are happening in bad ways to where it's not conducive to a healing process for her and her
No.
son.
There is no healing for the it's there's a lot of insomnia, and
Hmm.
it's like it's distantly on my on the edge of my mind, and I know there was a few there probably several movies that have been made about insomnia and whatnot that are just kind of like
Hmm.
you you really feel that with this character. I mean, you
Hmm.
just the misery just wafts off of the screen to you,
Hmm.
to like where it's you kind of you think back to like the closest analogy I can think of is like I don't know about down where you're at, but here we just been we just hit quite a few heat records, or not heat records, but heat excessive warnings, where it's 100%. It's good old Midwest, that southern Midwest, 100% humidity,
Hmm.
90, 100 plus degrees. And if you can imagine not having air conditioning and being having to go to sleep in
Hmm.
that in your bed, you just pooled
Hmm.
and sweat. There is no sleeping. That's what it kind of
Hmm.
reminded me of. Like it's so
Hmm.
apropos at this time of year.
Yep.
That insomnia. Yeah, I didn't realize, I didn't put two and two together until like she, did the thing with the tooth. I didn't realize that
Hmm.
was like really bothering her. I didn't pick up on that right away, to be honest. But now
Yeah,
that you mention it,
it's one of
it's there.
those. And that's another thing about this movie is she was able, the writer director Jennifer Kent, she got to live with this story for a long time. She did it as a short film in 2005, a 10-minute, and it's on the Blu-ray, that
Mm,
10-minute, and she calls it the Baby Babadook story.
mm,
But because it's yeah, it kind of drills out, it doesn't have any of the grief or any of the extra bit in it. It's just the mother and the child dealing with this doll that's that's this evil doll. And it's a fun little short film to do, but that short film kind of stuck in her head. And again, she wrote the script, but kind of sat with it for a few years as well, and really was able to kind of craft this. Um, I would say it's only an hour and a half long movie, and it's there you may be able to shorten it a little bit here and there, but it's a pretty tight movie.
I would say that that's
Yeah.
true. I would agree with that 100%.
It's all there. About 45 minutes into it, you're going, where in the heck is this going?
Right.
And it can't get any worse. And yes, it does. It does get worse.
Yeah.
And now there's waves to it. There's some horror movies or psychological movies that just kind of beat you again and again. I there's there's um there's kind of levelings off at certain moments where things kind of calm down, and you almost think, okay, well, here's their chance to fix this,
Right.
and it doesn't get fixed, and it gets worse. And it's very very interesting that it goes into those dips and plateaus to where you can catch your breath a moment, and then you get get plunged back into it, and it gets a little bit darker.
Yeah. There, there were a few parts where I did get beat up a little bit, more than I cared to. Because you kind of the movie doesn't, it doesn't it doesn't baby you.
Yeah.
Those waves break pretty hard when you're into it.
And I think if you're a parent, it could hit you harder as well.
I think that's what it was. I think that's what it was. It was just like, oh my god, like that's why like that. The only bone to pick I have. I mean, I understand why. You know, it's not it's a minor thing, but you know, this just has to do with this like, come, are we doing this? No, we're not doing this. Like that.
Well,
Uh,
there's
the only
yeah,
part that
there's
I had to fast forward through was just
yeah.
one minor part because I can only take so much already on top of it, and it's just like because the setup, you have the setup right there, and I'm not going to go
Mhm,
into it, but you have, but that's the beauty of it. That is the beauty of it, like where it's at. But aside from that, like aside from getting a little
mhm,
bit of whiplash as a parent,
mhm,
but you know, so you stick with it though. You are rewarded, and it has probably some of the finer. I don't know how you would put it, but it's probably some of the finer, like just one-on-one. You know, like where it's just you see the character and then descent into madness.
mhm,
You know, and into
mhm,
this uh this jacket this
mhm,
of paranoia and madness and grief and love even
mhm.
rolled into one.
Yeah, yeah,
um and
and
and you can see, and the thing is that even when she is in this state, it's not constant. It's not constant, which I think
mm-mm,
works for it, because like she'll occasionally, like she'll kind of pull herself out of it, or she's just trying to cope, or trying to find a good defense or
yeah,
something, because like there's a scene, part like where it's toward the probably two-thirds of the way through, where she's like, all right baby, you got to wake up, you can't go to sleep, we got to wake up, and then she's basically her trying to stay awake so the
mhm.
boogeyman didn't come.
All right. Yeah,
Essentially.
and there's that and Essie Davis. We've said she's incredible in this, but she really is
She
and
is.
also, I mean, she's put through the ringer like the child is, and
Oh
obviously
god.
it's not a glamorous role. I mean, she's
No.
she's not she doesn't have the luxury of all the beautiful makeup that they could have on this. So she's a stressed out mother, and she looks the part. And she
Oh,
also
100%.
in the interview that she did, she referenced The Shining as well, and she said the crazy thing is that in this movie she gets to play both the Shelley Duvall character's role and the Jack Nicholson role in this,
Very true.
both at different times, and then almost sometimes within the same scene. She's kind of going from victim to tormentor to victim, and in humans aren't simple creatures; they're
No.
multifaceted, and this movie really examines this. It again looks at things that people don't want to look at, like you know, you hear those crazy stories where the mother is abusive to a child, and
Right.
you go, how can a mother do this? And this is one of those movies that kind of examines how that's possible or how that might happen. And they're looking at the people as humans, and it'd be very easy to say, okay, or portray the character as a monster like Kathy Bates and Misery, have her stomping through the house and screaming at the kid. But this lady, I mean, there's scenes of her being completely vulnerable, and you just want to hug the lady and say, hey, just take some time off here, recoup. And then there's other scenes where she's a complete monster to the child, and you're like, oh my gosh, get her away from this child. and
Right.
and it's that same person, and you can believe it's that you would normally get kind of a whiplash watching a performance like that. It's like, oh man, she's going from one end of the spectrum to the other. But this movie makes it work, and you can understand what her mental state is. And again, a lot of it's under the surface, a lot of it's that this movie doesn't baby you. It doesn't tell you what to think. It's completely up to you. And like I said, there's a little those little hints. Um, and we've talked a lot about the mother, but the the child's fascinating too. I mean, he's very industrious. He's almost like Macaulay Culkin. He's figuring out all these little traps and things that he can do to the Babadook to defend himself. And he's a victim, but he's not as well. He's active in trying to fix things. He wants to protect him and his mother.
Right.
And he does it the only way that he
Yeah.
knows how. And there's they're always trying to defend themselves and make excuses for their foibles, but um and so that and a lot of times when you see um the parent, the mother and the child, um you know they're looking at the kind of cross looks of, say, her sister or the classmates and whatnot, and you wonder how much of that is also in their head, because the sister acts pretty pretty ugly, but how much is that the perceptive of the mother of the child, of her sister,
Yeah, they don't spare these characters anything.
Mm-mm.
They don't give them an inch at all. And you see that throughout the whole thing. And the other thing too, I think that makes it so real is that even with the interactions with the sister, even when it gets nasty and not so nice,
Mm-hmm.
it gets real. And
Mm-hmm.
that is very true. And I was going to say something about the about Sam, about the son.
Mm-hmm.
He really is a hero in this. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not just Jennifer Kent telling this small little child, Noah Wiseman, hey, you're a star, or not star, but you're a hero. He really is. No matter what, he never gives up. He doesn't quite understand what's going on. And the beautiful part about the acting that he brings to the table is, when you see a very strange, not so good scene, or one that kind of is not necessarily directly implied violence, but there is definitely, like you were saying, under the surface, there's this
Mm-hmm.
rising threat, even in those scenes where nothing necessarily happens per se in some of those scenes,
Mm-hmm.
but you can feel his confusion of like, what is going on, and he kind of,
Mm-hmm.
you you
He's
you
trying to process it too.
right,
He's
yeah,
trying to
you can
figure it out.
yeah, and you're right there with them, which they nailed that perfectly. I will
Yep.
say that. Time and time again, throughout this journey that you take with these people. Uh,
And you could tell that and I've kind of I really like Jennifer Kent as a writer and director. That her directing is amazing in it, and you could tell that she's seen horror movies. She knows the pacing of horror
yep,
movies. There aren't
natural. She's
any.
a natural.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's no jump scares in this
Mm-mm.
movie. All of the scares are earned and are subdued. There's a scene where the child is hiding and the mother's looking for him, and she comes towards us through the hallway, and then off on the little corner off to the side there, in the little cabinet where the towels are or whatever, he's hiding there.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't jump to that. You just see him in your corner of your eye, and you see that fear in his eyes. I mean, that's that's a very dramatic moment that's really understated. And again, like Mike said, a lot of the movements of the monster is stop animated. Uh, and again, he's hiding in the corner. He's in the shadows. Like I say, he doesn't jump out and knocks you over the head. It's very understated. All the horrors are earned. And now it's currently showing on Hulu and Shutter, along other places.
I think
Now,
Netflix too.
No, I don't think it's on Netflix
It
anymore.
was. Yeah, it
It
was. It was.
was.
It was. You're
Yep.
right. Yeah.
And and
Yeah,
a
I
funny.
watched it on Hulu. Yeah.
Okay. The funny thing is, a few years ago, a handful of years ago, it got placed into the LGBTQ
I wish I.
section of
That's funny.
Netflix.
I know where you're
So
going with this.
yeah,
Yep.
so if you see a the Babadook in all of his rainbow colors, he's been adopted by the LGBTQ community. Again, this movie, there's no there's no identification of anyone being LGBTQ in the
Yeah. It
movie.
doesn't make any
Even
sense.
even we said there's a lot of stuff under the surface that's not even hinted at in this movie.
No,
They just
not like that. Not
someone
like that.
someone at
Yeah.
Netflix must have just kind of clicked on something in the wrong section, and that movie got bumped over there. You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
so
the background that I got was like a Tumblr user joked that it was, and I guess it got picked up.
right.
And years later, then I guess it made its debut. It was trending on Twitter, I guess, and then
Hmm.
my notes say that it was somebody decided it would be a good idea to put it as a symbol for a Pride Month in
Yep.
2017 or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, who
Yeah,
knows?
yeah. I think it happened in 2017, and
Yeah,
I mean, it's it is what it is. So when I was looking for a thumbnail to generate for our thumbnail, when you look up the Babadook, he's often has the rainbow colors with him
that's
because
funny.
there's several memes with him. Which it is what it is. Jennifer Kent thinks it's kind of funny, and
Playful joke.
she has no problems with it. Um, Now she's only done one other movie called The Nightingale, and I saw that it came out in 2018. I've seen the Blu-ray of that. Now that's another emotionally charged movie. It's not really horror, has horrific elements to it. I would say it's a kind of a it's a period piece, sort of survival movie with a female protagonist. And that's another thing I wanted to say
Sure.
is the there's not a whole lot of, at least in movies, there's not a whole lot of female written and directed horror movies. And I find that perspective fascinating because what a female um, a woman can do with the horror is uh, it gives it a different flair to what a man can do. And there's that meme that's been happening for the past few years of the woman centric things, and it's,
Mm.
well, this isn't for you. I think when people have to say that, you're a lazy filmmaker, because this movie gives you a female centric perspective,
Right.
a woman's perspective of her relationship to her child. And I know Mike could relate to her. I can relate to her. As long as you do a story and do the characters justice, you could relate. And this movie can be for everybody.
No, and this kind of goes back to what we say over and over and over again. And it's not just us, it's not original thought. It's a critique on modern sensibilities in a modern audience. We don't need any of that. Stop that silliness, because I will say this. I do think that and I have no clue if Jennifer Kent is a mom or not. But boy, howdy, did she nail from the parent's perspective what a mom that she had to been or done some kind of background on that, because there's no way
Mhm.
that she just went in there with her imagination. It's just no way that was that happened. Um, so and like you were saying, everyone can relate, whether you're a parent. It might hit a little different if you're a parent, to be
Right,
honest.
absolutely,
But
absolutely.
all the same, you are with them short of Elon Musk and the Neuralink becoming a thing, and
Hmm.
you being able to hook up your mind to somebody else's mind and to feel their pain, or a Vulcan mind meld. This is as close as you can get to feeling the palatable emotions that is displayed here. And as you go, you kind of layer on layer until the crescendo to the crescendo, and then it's a crashing orchestra of uh, of not it's not sheer terror. That's not what this is.
Mm-mm.
But I would love to see Jennifer Kent's movies because
Mhm.
she, again, this goes back to if you're a good director and you know how to take subject matter in your own mind and know how you want to put that out into the world. That is a very rare talent. So I echo your sentiments about, definitely being on the hook for whatever this
Yeah.
woman, this
Yeah.
director does. For it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. And never
And
mind this, modern day crap, um,
right.
where it's force fed to you and like you're like the
Mhm.
audience is dumb and you're dumb, and we
Mhm.
have to tell you and beat you over the head until you're black and blue until you get it, and
Yeah.
then by that time you just want to turn it off. Not
Right.
this is not that. This is not that at all.
And one of the joys of the 80s and 90s with Stephen King blowing up in the uh, writing horror, and along with Peter Straub and Dean Koontz and Clive Barker, we had those titans writing horror. It allowed for all these other writers to put out horror works as well, because everybody there was this excitement, and people were wanting to read horror, and a lot of female horror writers came out with their short stories and um, horror novels, and I ate that stuff up. Again, it's a different perspective of things, but they're fascinating stories, and again, I hope that this will lead to even more women exploring horror in both writing and directing it,
Right.
and hopefully we can look at her other movie Nightingale in the future,
Sure.
because that we have like paired movies in the past by the
Mm.
same directors, but I think we might want to get away from that and kind of, because each of these movies can
Are
be
amazing on
explored.
their own.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I think we might have shortchanged some movies in the past with our movies where we or our podcast where we've kind of discussed all of them all at once.
Right.
And
Growing
and we
pains.
and
Yep.
like Mike said, we're getting better and better with what we're doing. So maybe we can revisit some of those in the future. Not anytime soon, because we've got plenty of new stuff or new old stuff to look at. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's something we could look at in the future.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is to kind of close out that thought topic for modern sensibilities and whatnot. You are not going to see a movie like this made by any major studio, save for maybe
Mhm,
A24 or maybe a long shot. But it's going to grow dust
mhm,
before somebody with a brain realizes that they have something good. This is yet another strong, like Chris Gore and other folks that we follow. This is just going to strengthen the hand of independent movie making even more.
yep, yeah.
And it's
Mhm,
going to come out more and more like that. And I was going to say real quick to touch on the thing.
mhm,
I had my notes that the Samuel, the boy character. This is kind of out of turn here, so I apologize. A little bit out of band. But he does display. They don't say it directly, but there is some kind of hints at like maybe you're kind of like when you see the kid, you're like, well, what's wrong with them? Like is he got oppositional defiance or is he
mhm,
autistic or something? So you can kind of sort of see that. So, and that kind of it hit a little closer to me probably too
mhm,
for some of this. For obviously we all have folks in our lives that have different this and that, but
mhm.
it touched on it and it if anything it made you sympathetic, and to
Yeah.
where it naturally tilts you while at the same time you want to smack the kid, to a certain degree. You also kind of it really get over that pretty quickly and it puts you on this angle where you slide down to sympathy very fairly
Mhm.
quickly, fairly quickly.
Yeah, you're trapped in that house with both the mother and the
You are.
child,
It's a
and
good way to put it.
you become you're there right there with them. Yeah, you like you said, they don't everything is left unsaid for the most part, and like you said, there's hints that maybe he's autistic, and I believe the Jennifer Kent has said in interviews where that mothers of autistic kids have come to her and said that they related to the mother at times during watching this movie, and it does, like I said, it does examine and kind of attacks that notion, that taboo of, a mother harming her child, or maybe not harming the child, but having those momentary lapses of, that everybody's kind of had that moment of, oh man, I just could kill that guy. And to say that's never happened, for a mother, that momentary lapses of reasoning. And this movie is all about that, that getting to that point where you can break. And I have to say, this movie reaches a different level for me because of how it ends. I just absolutely love the ending of this movie. Just There's this balance of, you know uh
Life and
yeah,
death.
right, that and also, um
Or
well,
that's not the right way to put it. It's the living and the departed. I would say that's probably a better way to
there
put it, maybe.
there's that, and then there's also, there's a tendency for us to say happily ever after at the end of a movie, either the happily ever after,
Yeah.
or end it in a really dark place. This movie doesn't do either or. There's a balance there, and obviously we're not going to get into too much detail there.
Right.
But there's not a sense of rainbows and
No.
sunshines at the end.
No.
But
Not even
there's
then. Not even then.
Right, but there's a balance that's reached, whereas in beginning of the movie there is no balance. There's a push to bury all the bad stuff, and that the bad stuff just erupts continuously in horrendous ways.
Yeah, if anything, I would say probably the only thing that's missing from our perspective, it would have been nice. And in the future we might revisit this, maybe, maybe not. At least this is a discussion topic. It really would be really would be fascinating to have a mom's opinion.
Yeah, that's what I
That
was
can
thinking after watching this. I said, "Oh
right.
man, we should probably have brought in one of our female friends to give their
Right.
perspective of this."
Yeah, it because it just there's only some things that you can speak to as a mom, and you just have to be a
Mhm,
mom, and you just have to
mhm,
be a woman to be a mom. Period. End of discussion.
mhm.
For you to understand that, because there is quite a bit. I have no doubt that this is a very unique female perspective that could only be served up by a female for sure. So like, we'll definitely say that. But yeah, the only part that I didn't care for was the one part that I already kind of talked about.
Mhm,
I felt like I know why they did it. To heighten the sense of what was going on. But
mhm,
you kind of, I don't know. That could have, I don't know. But you know what? I'm not Jennifer Kent, and I didn't make this movie. And if I would have made it, it would have been a train wreck. So, so there you go. But
yep.
aside from that minor gripe, which really isn't much of one, and that's just because I think it was mainly because I was already flooded from the perspective of a parent and the child, and that's already sensitive
Mhm.
anyway. You go to this next thing, it's like, nope, I'm not doing that.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah. This
only
is.
part, and I very, very rarely, but I will always exercise my ability to fast forward through things that I just don't need to see. I already know it's implied. That's probably the only time that I've done that in quite a long time. But that's just because I just didn't want to deal with it. Like I can
Mhm,
only soak up so much,
mhm.
thing to, and if I if I do something, good grief, my camera's all AI. Anyway, if I let something go too much, it'll take away from the whole thing, and I didn't want that
Right.
for that. But again, it's a very
Yeah.
minor gripe. Nothing else. The pacing was on point. I did think it did kind of beat you over the head a little bit if you're sensitive and your parent. But aside from that, it's nothing that you're not going to weather very well. And still, it just kind of goes to show how life is a journey and life is about balance and how quickly that can get turned upside down and
Hmm.
twisted around very
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah.
And you
Just a
kind of
few
just see,
bad days, and yeah, the things can
yep,
go. Yeah.
yep,
Yeah, and we've got several movies where men reach their breaking point. There's the one movie Falling Down. But yeah, where famously, you have male characters that reach their breaking point, and this is just one of those where a female character reaches her breaking point. Another thing to point out, Jennifer Kent does own the Babadook property. So, and she said there's never going to be a Babadook 2, so
that's good.
don't have to worry about Babadook 2, the Electric Boogaloo coming out anytime soon.
Yeah, and you know what? That kind of goes back to our criticism of big studios. They could have never
Hmm.
made this because they would have had their grubby fingerprints on it, and they would have messed it up.
Hmm.
And I think of, like some or somewhat cult classics. This is definitely a modern cult
Hmm.
classic if there ever was one. And there's a little bit of possession, a little bit of grief, a little bit of closure
Yeah.
in some ways. And things are very symbolic in this, and
Mhm.
not in a way that beats you over the head either. There are very clear one-to-one ratios here with what you're seeing and what you're getting that just flow through, and you don't question it because it just makes sense. Um, that kind of approach does not work for all movies, and
Right.
so it's a very high risk, high reward
Hmm.
area that Jennifer Kent is playing in. To be clear,
Hmm.
which and she nails it, which
Hmm.
just goes to show how it works
Yeah.
for this kind of thing. I don't know that I have too much more to say,
Hmm.
other than I think we're kind of coming up to the caboose. Was there anything else you wanted to highlight or throw a shout out to, or really got you excited about like seeing the next? Actually, point of fact, have you actually seen Nightingale, the next one, or have you
Oh
not
yeah,
seen that?
yeah. I have
Okay,
seen it.
Raj.
Yeah. This movie I was going to say was made for $2 million, and 30,000 of it was crowdfunded. So another
Oh yeah, Kickstarter.
shout out to Kickstarter and crowdfunding. This kind of helped get this movie made in a way um, that that was conducive for this. And again, there's people that just love like Marvel movies, that's their
Sure.
kind of event movies. They love
Right.
those movies. And this is sort of like my what I get excited about. These are my Marvel movies. These are things that I get excited about. These I hear about,
Infinitely better though.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's something you can really dig your teeth into and really explore with movies like this. And yeah, and the Nightingale, I was kind of hesitant about it because I'd heard some maybe not as good things about that one. But I've seen it and I love that movie as well. And it does take you on an emotional journey, unlike anything else I've seen. So I mean, Jennifer Kent knows how to uh, really, really wring the emotions from
Oh,
these movies. So,
yeah.
yeah, again, we'll probably want to, maybe throw in some fun '80s movies in between. But, but yeah, we should be able to circle back to her. And I know that she's in getting ready to do a new movie, or
Okay.
it's sort of in production. So it seems like it takes her a few years to get these movies out, which again, if it's this kind
Totally
of
fine.
quality, then that's not a bad thing.
Not at all, not at all. And I think that leaves us up to the caboose here.
Hmm.
And I've been Mike.
And I'm Thomas, and look out for the Babadook.
If it's in a word, or it's in a look, you can't get rid of the Babadook. This has been a the1st-The-Last-TheNerdom production.